This is the most dedicated podcast to Jews in the entire world.
It is.
ChayaLeah got on early flight this morning, flew across the country, comes home, instantly sits down at her computer to record this podcast. So
Literally, I got home 20 minutes ago.
we all
That
owe
is
her
that
a
is
debt
that's
of
right.
gratitude.
Thank
What
you.
were you doing? What were you doing in Florida?
I was at a wedding. One of my best friend's son got married, and there were 600 Jews in a room, and it was
Six
very
hundred.
yeah. There's 600 people at the wedding. It
God.
was beautiful. It was beautiful. Very hot. If you've
I
ever
heard the
been
air
to Florida.
conditioning. I heard the air conditioning wasn't working.
The air
That true?
conditioning was, well, I think it was just there were too many people in the room. I'll be honest
Right.
with you, the chuppah, the actual marriage ceremony took place outside, as is the custom of Chabad to always do it outside no matter what. So I went outside and I lasted for about 2 minutes, and then
That was it.
I'm not related. He's not my best friend, this kid. Like, I'm out. So I went back inside.
Who did the wedding? Who was the
Who
Masadik, the
was
rabbi?
I think Maishi Denberg,
Moshe
the
Denberg,
father
the
of the
father of
bride.
the
Yeah,
bride.
yeah.
Okay.
We
Um,
were talking last episode about how Chabad is all about early adopters of technology. I can't believe in circumstances like that they don't simulcast. They can have the wedding outside, but then simulcast it indoors where people can be in the air conditioning.
It was hot. It was hot. And the funny thing is, I mean, and this is just an observation, but Orthodox Jews dress like in a lot of clothes. Like the men were all in suits and ties, and many of them in coats and hats, and the women were all very modestly dressed. And I'm like, everybody was sweating. There was a lot of sweat going on in that room, but it was really beautiful wedding. So
it's funny. My daughter, she rides horses, and now because when they're competing in like her equitation stuff, they have these like formal outfits they wear, but now the jackets are this really light synthetic material that it's not like big heavy wool jackets anymore like back in the day. Do the men have they made that conversion in the Hassidim yet? No, it's still the heavy wool jackets.
Pretty heavy.
Oh God! Oh God!
And black. It would be heavy and white, but it's heavy and black. So it's yeah.
I'll tell you one quick thing before we start recording. I mean, South Florida is just incredibly Jewish. I mean, everywhere we went, it's just, we live in Long Beach, and you just don't see a lot of Jews like around. You don't see a lot of Orthodox Jews around. And everywhere I went in Florida, I mean, it was just packed with Jews, and there are tons of synagogues and restaurants and kosher stores, schools, everything you need to live a Jewish lifestyle. I was really overwhelmed by it because it's changed. I mean, Florida's always been very Jewish, but certainly in the last, I don't know, 20 years, would you say, Ta? I don't know.
I'd say 20 years, but certainly in the last 3 years.
Yeah, since COVID.
Since COVID,
yeah.
you've had a number of Jews moving, and Orthodox Jews moving to South Florida from New York, California.
Yeah, it's incredible. I mean, it's booming. It's beyond amazing. So if anyone's looking for
but the weather, forget it.
I mean, my husband wears glasses.
6 months you can tolerate it, but 6 months a year is just brutal.
My husband wears glasses every time we got out of the car. They fogged up because in the car it was nice and cool with air conditioning, and then we would get out and his glasses would fog up in a second. I mean, it's unbearable. But somehow people live there. I don't really get it. I don't know.
You pay the price somewhere.
Yeah.
You want to pay $5 a gallon of gas? Come to California.
Yeah.
We'll honor you with $5 a gallon of gas, homeless people, and traffic. And but I was sitting outside last night at about 9 p.m. in my backyard, and it was breezy and cool, and just the greatest weather here in Long Beach.
Yeah.
But I drove by my gas station, and it's still $5. It's still $5, and the homeless guys are still on Orange Avenue.
I know.
So
it's true.
Welcome to paradise, baby.
Right.
Yep.
So this week, we are going to continue our conversation about the Rebbe, but we're going to look at specifically the campaigns that he started. He had 10 mitzvah campaigns, and we're going to go into each one of them as in depth as we can, or, just to hear maybe some of the background and what it means and how we actually implement it in our lives. So this is more of an actionable episode, I think, where people can walk away with some ideas of ways that you can incorporate some of the Rebbe's teachings into your own life, because, it could be overwhelming to think about how can I do anything, that to honor the Rebbe or whatever, or even just to start, having a more Jewish lifestyle. I think these 10 things are all really good ideas to jumpstart whatever journey you want to be on. So without further ado, do you want to, Jay, do you have a start, or what do you want to do?
So last episode, we talked about the Teffilin, and we told the stories about the Teffilin. But I was thinking one thing that we didn't talk about, which maybe, Rabbi, you can just talk about really quickly, is if you're a guy that wants to start wearing tefillin, how would you go about getting a pair and learning how to use them and those types of things, if you didn't want to be limited to just going to 770 and finding one of the pushy Chabadniks to put it on in the middle of the street for you?
Yeah.
Okay. So the first thing is, if you live in a big city or even in a small city anywhere in America or around the world, call your local Chabad guy. This is the easiest way to get into the Chabad house. Hello? Yes. Chabad of Ogden, Utah. May I help you? Yes, Rabbi, I'm a Jewish man, and I would like to start putting on tefillin. What's your address? I'll be there in 7 minutes. Okay. So that's the universal code for getting inside a Chabad house. All you got to say is, I'm a Jewish man and I would like to start putting on tefillin. Any Chabad guy, anywhere of the 5,000 emissaries, will be at your door before you know it. If you live in a town where there's no Chabad and you'd like to start to put on tefillin, there are a number of different ways. First of all, you have to order a pair of tefillin. Tefillin are made specific. They have to be kosher, on parchment with a special kind of ink, written by a scribe. So there's a process to it, and so you have to be careful where and how you buy the tefillin. They're not inexpensive. Tefillin, you can imagine that they're labor intensive. So you can find a reliable seller of tefillin, mainly on the East Coast, or we have here in LA as well, certainly in Miami. And either they will help you and send you the tefillin with instructions, or you could go on YouTube, and there's a lot of different places you can go on YouTube to how to put on tefillin. The thing is, there are too many places because there's a number of different customs on how. You have Chabad, and you have Sephardi, and you have Mizrahi, and you have Litvish, and you have German, and you have people that sit when they put on, people that stand when they put on, people that put it on going forward, people that go putting on backwards. So you have to choose. If you're going to do it through Chabad, you got to go, how does Chabad put on tefillin? And there's those videos that will give you a step-by-step walk through. But the best thing I would say is, if you're living in a town with a rabbi, contact the rabbi and he will help you. That's it. You're going to need help starting. But it's a beautiful thing. The advantages of phenomenal off in the morning and concentrating and getting your day started through some directed effort, by putting on tefillin. It's just phenomenal. Even if you put it on for 5 minutes, you don't have to do it for 2 hours. For 5 minutes, and it'll get your day off like it's a shot of penicillin. It's great. Tefillin is like penicillin.
100. They rhyme for a reason.
I just came up with that. Brilliant.
A tefillin a day keeps the doctor away, or something.
Exactly. I remember in the good old days, back in the day, in the 70s or 80s, when we had like parades or whatever, inevitably there will be a sign, pot, P-O-T, put on tefillin. So like, let's do pot, put on tefillin.
But not on Shabbos.
Not on Shabbos or holidays.
Or holidays, right?
Holidays. But that's just a detail. Put on tefillin. I mean, if you put it on Shabbos and you didn't know, good for you. I would say.
Jay started
good for
recently. You should say how did it go for you in the beginning? I mean, now you do it every day, but how was it?
Yeah. So I live in Rhode Island. There's a local Chabad house here with Rabbi Laufer, and I went in, and I went there for the holidays, and then a contacted him and told him I want to start putting on tefillin. And I actually had a very old pair from my stepfather's father's pair. And I brought that in, and he said, it's a little sketchy. He's like, I doubt this is still kosher because it's so old and had some rips in it and yada, yada, yada. And he said, let me see what I can do for you. And and I mean, literally maybe a week later, maybe not even that long, he had them, and I went in and he showed me how to do it. And yeah, and it's been probably, I don't know, 7-8 months now, and I don't miss a day.
Absolutely fantastic.
So
Fantastic. But you
yeah.
did it. You had the magic words. Rabbi, I want to put on tefillin. Next thing you know, Laufer's living in your house.
Yeah,
Look
exactly.
in the basement. He hasn't left. I mean,
yeah, that's right.
There.
Exactly. So yeah, but I fully endorse what the rabbi said. It's a great way to start your day, for sure.
One of the interesting things, and we don't have to get into the details of this, but people might find it interesting that the Chabad custom is actually to wear 2 sets of tefillin, because there's different there are different opinions on how the text inside of the scroll should be, and so
the order
of the text, right? And so they wear 2 pairs of tefillin, not at the same time. First they put one on, then they do the other. So I have 4 sons, thank God. So we had the great privilege of buying 8 sets of tefillin for my sons, which, hopefully they appreciate the investment we've made in their Judaism.
I will,
and they'll buy for their sons.
Please God, yeah.
And I will say, I do not do 2 pairs of tefillin. I do 1 pair.
No. Okay.
Do people do more than 2? I think
Yes,
there's
there are
some
4.
that do more.
Actually, 4.
4.
Very few people do the 4. The Rebbe did 4. Oof. But when you say 4, it doesn't mean that there were 4 separate sets of tefillin. There were 4 head parts. The arms were only 2. I mean, it gets technical, but very few people put on 4. But there are 4 different types of tefillin.
Wow. Yeah.
All right. So tefillin, we've covered that mitzvah. So I would say probably the next one that's probably most well known at this point is the lighting of Shabbat candles.
Correct. So what I would say is, I have to put a disclaimer before we do this, because people sometimes misunderstand what the Rebbe's intentions were, and they think that the Rebbe whittled down the Torah to 10 mitzvahs.
Right.
That is the furthest from the truth. The Rebbe kept going over and over again. Let me just say this clearly. Every Jew is responsible to keep all 613 commandments, as many as you can in present day. I mean, obviously, some of them we can't with the temple and sacrifices and this.
Right.
But every Jew is responsible to keep all of the mitzvahs of the Torah. That's not negotiable. If you're Jewish, that's what your responsibilities are. Now, because we live in a society where there's many secular Jews and people who have not even have started to do any mitzvahs, the Rebbe thought it would be a good idea, to start people off on the road. Ultimately, the goal is to get people to fulfill all the Torah. But just to get them started, this is what we call a mitzvah. This is what we call a campaign. It's only a campaign to get you going. And even though the Rebbe said many times that if you do tefillin once, yes, it's great, and it has an everlasting effect, because spirituality doesn't diminish over time; it stays there. So whatever energy you brought into the world with your once putting on tefillin is here. Still, he would not be satisfied if you said, Rebbe, I put on tefillin once, great, mazel tov. Now, a second time, and then a third time, and then a fourth time. So these were all starter mitzvahs. But the ultimate goal was to get everyone. I just wanted to say that, so I don't want to think, look what Chabad did. Chabad threw out the entire Torah and kept 10 mitzvahs. So what I would do is, I know you brought up the mitzvah of Neshek, which is Neir Shabbos Kodesh, the lighting of Shabbos candles. But what I would do, just for clarity's sake, is I'll go chronologically of when the Rebbe started the campaigns one by one, and then
great.
If you don't mind to do that, and then we can again talk about each one. If you have any questions, just feel free. Both of you feel free to throw it. Now, the other 9 that we're going to be talking about today were really initiated in a very short period of time. It's pretty much in the 70s, from 74 to 77. That's what we would call the mitzvah years, where every couple of years, or no, every couple of months almost, the Rebbe would come out with a new campaign. Some of these campaigns were started in response to a specific event. Many of them were just started because the Rebbe felt now is the time to really start pushing this. The next one after the the Teffilin campaign, which really started years before in 67, so we went through a period of 67 to 74 where there was one campaign. The Rebbe started a Torah campaign where he started talking about how we need to capture the world through the study of Torah. And because technology was now coming in and everybody's getting computers, and this was a time when people with access to Torah was becoming much more available than it was in the past. Rebbe said we need to take advantage of that and start, number one, yourself learning more Torah. That means that make that your main thing to do, but also to teach Torah. To get out there, and find people that if you, the old saying was that if you know one letter, an aleph, and you know someone that doesn't know an aleph, I think we mentioned before, then ChayaLeah had mentioned this, do that. So that was campaign number 2. It was called Mitzvah Torah. It was simply a campaign to get more people to study Torah. Now, of course, behind the idea, of course, if you study Torah and then you studied about some mitzvah, and then you'd get more curious, and then you'd start to do that, was great. But in and of itself, the study of Torah, the Rebbe mentioned many times, is keneged kulam. If you take a scale and put 612 on one side and the Torah study on the other side, it equals out. That's how important the study of Torah is. And again, he empowered everyone in that room, not only rabbis and not only heads of yeshiva, but every single individual to, number one, brush up yourself, keep studying yourself, and number 2, get out there and start Torah classes and keep going and keep going and keep going as far as Torah is concerned. So that was...
It's interesting because we just heard a speaker the other day who really was emphasizing this idea. And one of the things that he said that resonated with me was, a lot of people feel, and I'm mentioning this because we got some messages about this actually. People say like, I never got to meet the Rebbe, or I never had the opportunity to, hear him speak in person or whatever. And he, the speaker that we heard from, said, the way you connect to him is through learning Torah. Like if you want to connect to a great person, or you want to feel connected to the Jewish people or to Israel, or any of those, any of the things that people kind of are longing for, the way to do it is to just sit down and learn. And I think it really spoke to me because I could sit a whole day and think of a million ideas. Oh, I'll go to a march or I'll go here, or I'll do this. But when I open a book, a sefer, and you just start reading or studying or listening to someone else teach, it connects me in a way that is different than anything else. So I really encourage people to, and there's no excuses today because everything's online. It's so easy. Everything's in English, or whatever language you want to speak, you learn better in. It's really, really simple today. So, and if you don't know where to start, just ask. You can send us an email, or you can send any rabbi an email, and they'll tell you where to start your Torah journey. So I just wanted to say that.
Of course, yeah.
Feel free, Toph. If you have any questions for me, you could ask me questions too.
Of course, absolutely.
Yeah.
So there was the third mitzvah was what we call mitzvah Mezuzah. What was the mitzvah? What was the campaign? The campaign was to make sure that all Jewish homes have a kosher mezuzah on their doors.
Right.
The Rebbe explained and talked about the importance. I mean, we're talking about in the 70s. I think this was just after, the Yom Kippur War. Jews were struggling. It was in the winter, I think of winter of 74. So the war was already, I think, beforehand, but it was, the Jewish people were, there was attacks and things were going on, and there was just a sense of, of insecurity. And the Rebbe said, well, the one way that we can ensure security in a Jewish home is by having kosher mezuzahs. I think somewhere around then, and don't hold me to the date, there was a terrible, terrible incident in Ma'alot where they went into into a school. Terrorists went into a
yeah.
school and killed a number of Jewish children. It was in the north of Israel. I think there were 20 casualties that were there. It happened around this period. I think it was the summer of that. And they know, and the story was they went and they checked the mezuzahs, and the mezuzahs were in kosher, and in the place. Now, not to make, there was no quid pro quo. This is not a, there's a cause and effect because there's no mezuzahs. This happened, to them. But the Rebbe took this opportunity and just to explain that one of the ways that we can ensure safety in our homes is have kosher mezuzahs. And not only on the front door, but in every door in the home that needs a mezuzah.
Right.
Some rooms don't need a mezuzah. For example, a bathroom doesn't need a mezuzah. A small closet, doesn't need a mezuzah. So there are rooms that are exempt, but bedrooms, living rooms, and kitchens, and other rooms that we use need mezuzahs. And the Rebbe went out to say that if you look at the mezuzah, and on the front there's Hashem's name with Shin Dalid Yud, 3 Hebrew letters for Shomer Dalses Yisrael. This is an acronym for He Who Protects the Doors of Israel. And unlike, a king who he sits inside the palace and his soldiers guard him, it's exactly the opposite. We, the soldiers, sit inside our home, and the king, which is God, sits outside the palace, to guard us.
Right.
So the Rebbe said, this is an insurance policy, to make sure that every single room has a kosher mezuzah. So I remember as a student then, and studying in Morristown, we went out to homes and took off mezuzahs. We became experts in checking mezuzahs and making sure that the mezuzahs were kosher. And again, we're providing kosher mezuzahs, for the door. I can't tell you how many times I went and I've checked a mezuzah that there's not even a mezuzah in there.
Right.
I mean, because people make the mistake in thinking that the cover is called the mezuzah. That's not the mezuzah. The cover is called a cover. The mezuzah is a kosher scroll inside the cover.
Right.
But many secular Jews don't know that. So they go out there and they buy something, and I open it up, and there's an article of the New York Times inside. And I go, what? No, you bought this? Well, we bought this in Israel, Rabbi. I know. I'm shocked that they had the New York Times in Israel. I guess, they ran out of Yediot Achronot, so they put the New York Times in there, or other things that are in there, or mezuzahs, scrolls that were paper, which I just tore in front.
Right.
You can't tear parchment, but paper you can tear easily. So these were non-kosher mezuzahs, and I had to tell them, I'm sorry, but you need kosher mezuzahs, and mezuzahs cost some money because again, they're written by a scribe on parchment. Not as expensive as Teffilin are, but there's still a cost, to them. But the Rebbe was emphatic about this, that if we want security, this is based on security. And again, I just have to go back to the idea that the Rebbe was a real believer in the connection between physicality and spirituality.
Right.
That if you think to yourself that you're going to buy a home that's going to be in a gated community, hire security guards, and this is going to be your safety protocol, I'm telling you now that you're missing a very vital part to your security. And what is that? A mezuzah. So again, over and over again, at many Farbrengens, at public gatherings, the Rebbe will talk about the importance of the Mezuzah campaign, and together with the Torah campaign and the Teffilin campaign, this rounded up. That you put on Teffilin, study Torah, have kosher mezuzahs, and you're well on the way to having a very, very, very secure home. To that.
So it's interesting because you mentioned the Shin Daled Yud name for God, and that's when you wrap Teffilin. When you wrap it on your bicep, you wrap a shin for that same reason, right?
That's right. And it's also, even as you go further down the arm, you'll notice there's a Dalet and there's a Yud also there. So it is the same thing. It's God's protective name that we put on every day to protect us and our families from physical and spiritual harm. And it's people gravitated to it. It was amazing how successful this campaign was, and still till today, secular people will call, Rabbi, do you have mezuzahs? My daughter's getting married. She's doing nothing else, but I need her to have a mezuzah on the door. And especially if you think about today's age, where people are afraid to show outwardly that they're Jewish because of what's, since October 7th, what's going on. How much more so is the mitzvah of Mezuzah important today, the Mezuzah campaign, to show your neighbors and the neighborhood that, you know what, we're not buckling. Like we had talked before, and ChayaLeah had brought up that the Rebbe was always about Jewish pride. And people are thinking, Rabbi, should I take my mezuzahs off? Take your mezuzahs off. On the contrary, you should put the mezuzah on today. Today is more than ever we need to show that Jewish pride, Jewish heritage and activity and commitment to Judaism. So there's no question about it that the Rebbe today would encourage 10 times more than back in the 70s that we need to have kosher mezuzahs on our doors all over the house.
I would say two quick things. One is if you've been to Israel and you land in Ben Gurion Airport, you walk down this kind of the famous walkway that unfortunately now is covered in posters of the hostages, but you get to a doorway that is the entrance to the airport where you go through passport control and customs, and on the doorway there's a huge giant mezuzah, the biggest mezuzah I've ever seen, and it just sets your whole like mind frame, that you're in a Jewish country. And I get chills every single time I walk through that doorway. Everybody stops to take pictures there at the mezuzah. And you just think like, this is our Jewish homeland. Like here it is. Here's this huge symbol of what it means to come into a Jewish airport in a Jewish country. And I love that mezuzah in Ben Gurion, and everybody if you've been there, you have a picture of it. And the second point I want to make, and then we can move on, after October 7th, and I was so proud of my students, we posted, if anybody wants a mezuzah for their dorm room or for, wherever their apartment, 13 students signed up for their, many had already, but 13 new students signed up to put a mezuzah up on their door. And I was so proud of them because that was not easy. And it is not easy to show that you're Jewish. And, and I was just, so I just wanted to say that because the young people are not as lost as a lot of people think. So. Anyway,
yep, that's for sure.
Or as I think most of the time.
That's for sure.
Reminder.
Yeah.
So yeah. Go ahead.
So on the same theme, of what we call security and protection, the next campaign was Mitzvah Tzedakah, the campaign of getting people to give charity. And here again, the Rebbe emphasized very, very strongly the idea that, when you give charity and you help somebody out, God is not going to remain a creditor to you. God is going to put it down in your account. And God forbid, there's the Rebbe will often mention the famous Medrash, where the Medrash, the holy books say that what you have done with the tzedakah, sorry about that, what you have done with charity, as you have enlivened someone's life. That means, the typical idea of tzedakah is to give money to a poor person, to literally a poor person in the street. And not only to a poor person, but to someone that has almost nothing. So God says to you, you know what? What you have done with giving of this charity to this poor person, you have given him life. Know that God forbid one day, if something should happen to your family that needs a special blessing for health, if someone in your family is ill, know that this is going to stand in your merit. Know that I will remember this, that you did something for my children, you gave them life, and I'm going to repay you to give your children life. And the Rebbe, talked about how each family should have a tzedakah box in their home, and not only in their home, but in every room. That the little children should have a tzedakah box, and encourage them that every day to put in a coin, whether a nickel, a dime, a penny, whatever it is, just to get them used to, get them going to understand the idea that, this is something very, very important. This is a fundamental mitzvah, fundamental commandment is the mitzvah of charity, and we do it every single day. Many people do it before davening, before prayers. They in shul, there's a pushka, there's a charity box. You put some money in, and then you pray just to show the Almighty that that you have been kind to us. We're going to be kind to the people that need it the most. And on a funny note, or a humorous note, the Rebbe once said, he asked a question, before many mitzvahs, we make a blessing. Let's say
Right.
before Shabbos candles, before eating, before putting on tefillin. How come you don't make a blessing before tzedakah? There's no blessing before giving tzedakah. So the Rebbe said, because the poor person is hungry, he needs your money. You're going to start making a blessing with all of the right intentions. And then you want to get the right Kabbalistic ideas in your
Oh my
head. And you're
gosh.
going to start with Baruch, Ata, Hashem, and stretch out the blessing because you want to do the blessing with the right intentions, the right kavana. In the meantime, this poor person is starving. He needs your money. So that's why don't make a blessing. Just give him the money and let him go, get his food. And Rebbe was chuckling when he said this, but he meant it seriously, that the main idea of this mitzvah is to actually give. Give, not to think about how great the mitzvah is, but to actually, give some charity, and charity, tzedakah tatzel memavis. It says in the holy books, in the Talmud, that charity literally saves you from death. There's a famous story with Rabbi Kiva and his daughter, that she helped out a poor person, and it was a day of her wedding, and there was a snake in her basket, and she took out one of these things that women used to put in their hair, a sharp needle, and put it in the basket, and she killed the snake. And when she opened up the basket, she saw the dead snake, and their father went, "Wow, what happened? And tell me what you did today." And she said, "Well, in the morning I was on the way, and I'm a poor person, and I gave him some charity." And he said, "Look, tzedakah tatzel memavis," that literally, charity saves literally from death. So we know how the importance of mitzvah tzedakah is. And on a personal note, when I was once upon a time, I was directing the Hebrew Academy, and we were going through some very tough financial times, and I had the opportunity to be by the Rebbe, and I leaned over to him with one of these dollars when we talked about a week ago, when the Rebbe used to give out the dollars on Sunday, and you would pass by and get. And I was very nervous and had to address the Rebbe, and I leaned over to him and I said to the Rebbe, I'm running the academy in Long Beach, California, and the financial situation is dire. And the Rebbe said, first thing you do is make sure that every classroom has a tzedakah box. That's it. Do
Wow.
that, and things will be better. And I thought to myself, okay. And when we did that, and things got better. Things got better. But the Rebbe's idea was that if you push the idea of tzedakah, if you teach the children, and they see in every classroom that there's a tzedakah box, and every day they put in things, that's going to open up your own fundraising abilities in your own mind, and God will make it easier for you to do that. So the Rebbe was, very much insistent that, what, do this mitzvah, and everything. It's another
Mhm.
way of another
Right.
protective coat to your existence.
I was at my mom's house this maybe 2 weeks ago or so, and mom passed away, but my stepfather still lives there. So we were just hanging out, and he found my Tzedakah box from
Oh,
Hebrew school,
no way.
from
Wow.
probably, I don't know, must have been the early '90s, something
Oh,
like that. And it was, yeah, and it was full of coins. So I said, oh, I guess
oh,
at some point I was doing something something
oh.
selfless.
That's nice. You should
So
take it
yeah,
and put it in your office.
it's funny. After I left, I thought about that. So I think next time I go up there, I'm going to grab it
You
and,
should take
and bring
it.
it
You
home.
should.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to say one thing just to add to what my dad was saying about the giving charity every day. I think there's also a really important part of it, which is just creating a habit for yourself. Because since I'm a little kid, I just know that every day you give charity and it becomes part of your just what you do, right? I mean, we talk about this a lot when we talk about mitzvahs that we do every day. It becomes a habit. And, you go to class, even starting in preschool, the first song you're singing in the morning is we're putting a penny in the tzedakah box. We're giving charity for someone else. And it becomes part of your life. It becomes a value that you can't separate yourself from because it's something you grew up with, and even I was just saying I was at a wedding just 2 days ago, and on the tables at the wedding, and this fancy wedding with gorgeous flowers and everything, tablescapes, there were little charity boxes with pennies set up so that at the wedding you can give some charity just to increase the holiness of the moment and the day. And so
Hmm.
it's good for kids. It really develops a habit for them to understand that it's about giving, not taking. And I can't encourage it enough just to make it a daily habit for everyone.
Yeah. It's
That's
an
For
my
sure.
important,
commercial.
definitely an important
It
mitzvah
is.
to start to get the kids used to it,
Yeah.
because this is the fundamental idea is, it's not all about you. I mean,
Well,
it's also about someone else. That's
right.
what the meaning of life is. And
Right.
Hmm.
charity is you take from the hard-earned money and give it away. That's a very important lesson for
I
kids.
think it's important for adults to show their kids that they're giving charity too, because I think a lot of adults don't tell their kids about it. My
Right.
mother always says this, she says
Yeah.
people might be giving charity and they don't tell their kids that they're writing checks because they don't see it. And then the kids don't know that this was important to their parents, right? So it's also important to
Mhm.
always talk to your kids about, oh, we gave a donation here, or we support this cause, or this is what we do for charity. And so just to make sure that they know that it's important to you and your family. So
Yeah,
just
it's a
not
good.
only the daily part of it, but just talking about it with your kids.
That's a very good point.
Right.
I'm full of
Right.
good points. I have so
Yeah,
many
excellent.
words of wisdom.
Excellent.
Just, just,
Excellent
just,
point.
just take the compliments. Yeah.
Just
Excellent points. There she goes.
let's go.
There she
Keep going. I
goes.
have so many more. Let's go.
Okay, here we go. The next one the Rebbe talked about once at a Farbrengen, at a public gathering, and that's how he would introduce these campaigns. It would be at a public gathering, and then he would start and done, and then middle of the gathering, he would say, "Okay, here we go," and another campaign. So he says, talking about the campaigns, I just want to add another campaign. And all of these campaigns that we've mentioned before, the Torah campaign, the Teffilin campaign, the other campaign, will all be remembered through Jewish books,
Mhm.
Svarim, Jewish books, that people should literally buy Jewish books and have them in their homes. Now, what he meant by Jewish books is not Bernard Malamud or these big Jewish books, not Jewish authors, books of with Jewish authorship. No, what he meant by Jewish books meant that you have to have a Chumash, that means
Torah.
the Bible, the Torah, at least a Siddur, a prayer book, a Tilim, a book of Psalms, and a book of Tanya, which is the fundamental book of Hasidic philosophy. And then, of course, many, many, many other books. Because, of course, the idea is that if you have a room and a home full of books, maybe there is a good chance that you'll actually open them. Means,
Right.
if you don't have a siddur, you'll never open up a siddur. But if you have a siddur in your home, or you have a chumash in your home, you will go over there and you will open up. But the mere fact that you have Jewish books in the home tells people that come to your home, you know what? This is a Jewish house. When you come in and you see fancy furniture and you see this and you see that and a chandelier, and a break front full of fancy dishes, it's very nice, and everyone could have that. But
Mhm.
that doesn't have a Jewish taste to it. There's
Right.
no Jewish flavor. When you come into a Jewish home and you see Jewish books all over the home, you know that this is a home that's committed to Yiddishkeit. This is a home that's committed, to Judaism. And this is always going to be. This is what the Rebbe used to call. This is a zikaron. This is a remembrance. You will look at the Jewish books and you will remember everything that we talked about. The Teffilin. You'll remember the Torah. You'll remember this. You'll remember that. You'll remember all of these things. So the Rebbe encouraged, and again, he went even further to say that in a child's room, you should have these books.
Right.
So when a child wakes up, even when the child is 1 year old or 2 years old, what do they see? Instead of they see a poster of some celebrity, they will see a chumash, and they'll see a
Mhm.
charity box, and they'll see a siddur, and they'll get used to the understanding that this is what's important in our lives. This is primary in our lives. Everything else is secondary, and that's called training.
Mhm.
That's training. So it was an incredible important things. And later on, years later, after the Rebbe had instituted this campaign, this was again in 1974. Years later, in the 80s, there was a challenge to the Central Chabad Library. We won't get into that. There was a challenge to it, and the Rebbe was victorious in winning over the library for the Hasidim.
They went to
And
court.
during that time, the Rebbe emphasized over and over and over again the importance of Jewish books, buying Jewish books, more Jewish books, buying more Jewish books. And then people would say, "Well, what if it doesn't matter? You know what? Even if you don't learn them, they're in your home. You may learn them. Why do you say you're not going to learn them? You may learn them. Who knows?
Mhm.
But encourage buying books, and you would encourage all of the publishers to give good discounts. Because
Mhm.
books get expensive. So he would encourage the publishers to give good discounts, and people will buy, and they'll get used to buying. And this to me, this was an incredible, because I love books. I love books. I mean, the Kindle, I got a Kindle as a present. It doesn't do it for me.
Yeah.
Online, it's difficult. I love an old book with, that's gone through something. I love going to used bookstores to hound, for other books. And I just love him. So this campaign spoke to me. There was another addendum to this, where the
Before
Rebbe
before
said,
bef- before you go into that, I just want to make one
"Sure,
point, because I think
I-
you touch on this very briefly, but I think it actually puts an exclamation mark on the importance of books to the Rebbe, which was the case of the library. And not to go too far into it, but somebody was selling the books out of the library for their own personal gain,
the
and
the
then
Central Chabad Library. They were
right,
selling the books out of the Central Chabad Library."
and
Right.
and the Rebbe used to buy the books back from the dealers who had purchased them. He spent a lot of money to get these books back, and I don't remember exactly how much it was, but it was a lot of money for an organization like Chabad. And I think it really goes to show how important like this library and these books were to the Rebbe, and they weren't just
Mhm.
pieces of paper, but they were really critical parts of the heritage of the organization.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then there was just a little addendum to this campaign, was to establish yeshivas, because books, are learning, and places of learning are great. So the Rebbe said, told us the story in the Talmud of, when the Jews were under siege from the Romans, and Rabbi Yochanan and Zakkai went into Vespasian, the Roman emperor, eventually, and asked, and said, yeah, you're going to be the emperor, but please don't do this. This is save the Sanhedrin, the Supreme Court. Don't eliminate them. He said, "Tenli Yavne v'chachamel." Allow me to take Yavne, which was the seat of learning, and its sages. And then based upon that idea, the Rebbe encouraged opening up more and more yeshivas, places of study. And this was like this was campaign A, to buy books, and then use these books to open up places of learning, so that, this is another level of safety, that the Torah study through these young scholars, will eventually help us in securing safety. I mean, again, don't
Yeah.
forget, this is the 70s. The war happened, and we're fighting now a PLO, the Palestinians. So the idea of, safety, and of guaranteeing the safety of Jews, not only in Israel but around the world, was foremost on the Rebbe's mind. So this was number 5 we've done. Then we go on to what Jay had mentioned at the beginning of the broadcast, of the podcast. Maybe one of the 2 most famous campaigns was what we call Neshek, Neiris Shabbos Kodesh, the idea that all Jewish women and girls, starting from the age of 3, should light Shabbos and holiday candles at the proper time. Now,
Right.
before I get into this one, I just want to say, while these campaigns were being developed, people would write into the Rebbe with other suggestions. Why isn't the Rebbe speaking about this mitzvah? Why isn't the Rebbe speaking about that mitzvah? I
Right.
mean, these were foolish people. I mean, you have to give the Rebbe ideas. I mean, he knows that there's a mitzvah of Shabbos. He knows
Right.
it. But people said, why does he talk about Shabbos? Shabbos is so important. So the Rebbe, many times, often would say, listen, I have no patent on the Torah. You want to encourage people to keep Shabbos? By all means,
Go.
go
Yeah.
ahead
Do
and
it.
encourage people to keep Shabbos. You want to deal with shatnez, that people shouldn't wear shatnez? Go, by all means, go ahead and and,
Well,
and work
that's
the
wool
mitzvah
or
of
linen.
shatnez. I have no problem with that whatsoever. This is the things that I think that I would like to establish here, and that's the story. But if you want to push Shabbos, you want to push shatnez, you want to push whatever you want to push, by all means, go right ahead. No problem. This one was controversial. Because why? Because for many, many years, it has been the custom by most places, not exclusive, but most places, married women would light candles. Only married women. Unmarried girls would not light candles on Shabbos. And
And
here the
many
Rebbe,
many Orthodox people still do that in many Orthodox communities.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but here the Rebbe was saying that he wants everybody, regardless of what your custom was, till now, it
Right.
doesn't matter if you're Sephardic, Ashkenazic, Yeshivish, whatever it is. He would like that every single girl from 3 years on should start lighting candles. Well, there was a big, huge backlash against the Rebbe on this, by rabbinical authorities saying, the Rebbe is instituting new customs in the world. I said, no. It used to be the customs many, many, many years ago that girls would light, and because of certain circumstances, it stopped. You know what? Maybe because you couldn't afford candles. People
Right.
just couldn't, were poor, so they could only afford 2 candles, so the mother would light, or there were no candles, so whatever the circumstances were. But there's no question that now in America today, because we have the opportunity, there's no doubt that everybody can have candles, and there's candles it's not a premium, it's not a luxury to buy Shabbos candles. Everyone should light Shabbos candles. Well, many halachic, arguments went back and forth. Of course, Lubavitcher scholars reputed, all of the arguments against the Rebbe.
Mm.
And then someone wants to go into the details in a scholarly manner, they can go back to the 70s and find those tracts that were written at that time. But nothing to say that if all of the campaigns showed success, this one was like beyond,
Yeah.
because people just ate this up. This was incredible. First of all, it was directed towards women, where, let's say, for example, Teffilin were directed towards men. Others were directed by the Torah study, a good thing maybe towards men. Here, this was exclusively for women, by women, from the girls on. And the Rebbe was, that year that he instituted it again in the 70s, was just constantly reminding us that the word for Neiros Shabbos is neshek, which means armaments, that this is part of our armaments. As important as it is to get, guns and tanks and howitzers and, and torpedoes and the F-35 fighters, it's equally important to get spiritual neshek, spiritual armaments. And how do we get spiritual armaments? There is nothing greater than when a grandmother and a mother and a little girl stand there on a Friday afternoon when the sun is setting at the proper time and light those Shabbos candles when they cover their eyes and they make the blessings. Up in heaven, you can't imagine the nachas ruach, the satisfaction, the joy that God gets from this by seeing this thing. And the Rebbe told a story once about how he got a letter from a family in Manhattan where the mother was walking down the street, and an anonymous student, we don't know who it is, approached them and asked them if they lit Shabbos candles, and they said no. He gave them the Shabbos candles. The mother had no intention of lighting the Shabbos candles, but because the little girl was stubborn, she says, "Mommy, we got the Shabbos candles. I'd like to light them." And she really, made an effort, and the mother allowed her. And then the father, who was an irreligious person, came home and saw a Shabbos candle. What? In my house, a Shabbos candle being lit a Friday in the evening. And the mother said, it's a phase. Don't worry, she's going to get over it. But she didn't. And the next Friday she wanted to light. And eventually the mother felt it's a bit hypocritical where the girl lights and she doesn't. So she began to light. And then the father really got nervous. But what? You're lighting Shabbos candles? And she says, yeah, and maybe it wouldn't be such a bad idea that as we light Shabbos candles, since, we're in, maybe you would make Kiddush. And he went, what? You want me to start making Kiddush? And, she said, yeah, and so he started to make Kiddush, and then he closed the television. Next thing you knew, they had challah on the table, and they had a Shabbos meal. And by the time the Rebbe got the letter, the lady wrote to him, today I like to tell the Rebbe that we're complete Shabbos observers, and my daughter goes to a Jewish day school. It was all because of this one student on a Friday afternoon in Manhattan that took the time and effort to give them this Shabbos candle. And the little girl lit the Shabbos candles, and it's and kahena v'kahena, the Rebbe said, and more stories of this happening, of people taking this one flame. And the Rebbe explained, think about the physical flame. What does it do? Why is Shabbos candles even instituted? Why do we even have Shabbos candles? So it tells us in the Talmud, because normally during the week, you didn't have a lot of light back in the days. So Shabbos, you didn't want to stumble in your home. So you wanted to have a nice meal. So even though during the week you ate dinner at sundown, but Shabbos you'd have to come home from shul and it would be dark. So the rabbis instituted to light candles, so the house should be lit. There should be warmth and there should be light while having the Shabbos meal. So the Rebbe says the whole idea is about stumbling, about not causing you to stumble, to bringing light into the world. So think about it. Today we don't need it, okay, because we have electricity. But the spiritual light that we cause, how we are not going to stumble because of this beautiful, beautiful commandment is incredible. And he took special effort to keep pounding and pounding and pounding away at this. And I could say today that tens of thousands of women today are definitely lighting Shabbos candles because of the Rebbe's campaign. And all of the detractors of this and that and this and that, detractors remain. Haters will be haters. That the Rebbe was never afraid of that. You want to hate, you hate. It's not going to stop me. It's definitely not going to stop me when I think that's something important. And the Rebbe proved the point that today, it's a common idea of little girls that when they turn 3 years old, they make a big party and they bring in a Shabbos candle and they put up, and the Rebbe said also, before lighting Shabbos candles, put a little coin into charity.
Right.
Train the little girl to put tzedakah before lighting Shabbos candles, just to train her, and then let her light her own candle, let her make the blessing herself. And when I see, in my home, when, my wife and my daughter-in-law and my granddaughter now come and they stand there all together and they light Shabbos candles, it brings a tear to my eye. Literally brings a tear to my eye. And this I can judge better or not, but this was one campaign like the Teffilin campaign that just skyrocketed, just took off.
Well, I could just add to that I think as a woman, I always loved this mitzvah, and I think it was really empowering that the Rebbe chose something that was proactive and something about light and Shabbos, rather than, in many cases in the Orthodox world, when they do any kind of campaign in a community, will often focus on, dressing modestly. Like if they're focused on like what the women should do, oftentimes it will come back to like what clothing they're wearing, or if they're covering their hair properly, or, which doesn't feel, I mean, not to say that that's not important. And, we can talk about modesty another time, but lighting Shabbos candles just feels so much more empowering. You're doing something, you're adding light to the world. And I really appreciate that the Rebbe went in that direction when it came to specifically a mitzvah for women to focus on, rather than, what clothing we were wearing or how we were dressed. So I've always really appreciated this campaign.
Yep.
I don't know, Jay, do you have any questions about it, or?
No, I think
quite a soliloquy.
Well, I think it's. I mean, I think this one it makes sense why this one would resonate with people so much, because a lot of the other ones are either sort of very personal things, or are sort of moments. Right? They're sort of more time bound, like giving tzedakah or putting up a mezuzah, like those types of things. But this one is really about bringing the house together into doing a thing as a family. So, it makes sense why this one would resonate with people so much.
Yeah.
So
it's really a special time. I could just say I've lit Shabbos candles every week of my whole life. And it's those few minutes, we cover our eyes. I think did we talk about Shabbos candles before? I don't remember, but
yeah, we did.
Few minutes, we did, right? Okay.
Yeah,
so
we did.
Go into it, but those few minutes are just very, very special, and a special time that women are able to ask for whatever they want and really thank Hashem for everything, and it's a beautiful time. Yeah. And it's the one time a week that I'm sad I don't have a daughter. Otherwise, it doesn't.
God willing, you'll have a daughter-in-law. You'll have 4 daughter-in-laws. You'll have granddaughters.
It doesn't bother me any other time, but I see my sister and her daughters lighting, and everyone lighting with their daughters, and then there's just me by myself. But I'm not complaining. I'm just saying it's the only time I notice
to look forward to.
Yeah, I mean, hey, you got. I mean, you didn't get a daughter. You didn't get a daughter to light Shabbos candles with, but you got to buy 75 pairs of Teffilin. So that's.
There you go. There's the trade-off.
Exactly.
There's the trade-off.
Exactly. Okay. Next, what's next?
Now, once the Rebbe started Mitzvah Neshek, the Shabbos candle campaign, to piggyback on that, he kept going on the same theme. Now, here again, we're going to have to talk about a little bit about a traditional household, of how it's run. Now, in America, we know that we have total equality. Men and women are equal, and there's no disputing that. But traditionally, it was where the woman was called the Akeres Abayis. The woman was the foundation of the home. She ran the home. She was the boss. and not only in the sense of setting down the principles, but in a spiritual sense. She set the theme of how the house is going to be run. And just like Shabbos candles, where she brings in the Shabbos, the mother is the one that brings in Shabbos because it's got to be done before sundown. The same thing is true, the Rebbe said, when it comes to the preparation in the kitchen. Now, even though that, of course, we know that there are men that cook, we know that, and then we're not denying that. And there's guys who are very helpful in the kitchen. We're not denying that.
Not
And
you.
we're not denying that. But the Rebbe said that the mother primarily is the Akeres Habayis. He based this on because he once asked the question: how did we get to this point in society that it's falling apart like this? Why is it like this that we see many broken homes, we see this, we see that, and we see other issues? Why is it so? He says because if you believe that that there is a combination of spirituality and physicality, and the Rebbe says what. And to paraphrase a famous dictum, that you are what you eat. Like a famous chef, a French chef once said, centuries ago, tell me what you eat and I'll tell you who you are. I mean, this was a famous, and the Rebbe said the same thing is true about a Jewish constitution, not a physical, but the bodily constitution, that we are what we eat. So, of course, the next logical step would be the idea of kashrut, idea of having a kosher home. And a kosher home would mean that, you only buy kosher products, kosher meat, kosher chicken, kosher cheese. Make sure that you have two sets of, you don't mix milk and meat together, and do all of that stuff, because it's not only about the diet. It's about your spiritual health, and your spiritual health has a definite effect on your physical health, and your physical health will have a direct effect on how you deal with society. And if you want a healthier society, means you want healthier people, and healthier people will only come from a diet where God deemed that, what, for a Jew, yes, a cow is good, a pig is not. But we can debate from today till the cows come home why this is so. Won't change the fact that this is what it says in the Torah. You can eat salmon, you can't eat a lobster. You can have tuna, but you can't have shrimp. And, all of these things, this is the way God intended for a Jewish diet to exist. So the Rebbe, campaigned to bring in more kosher. So what was the campaign about? That, what, we were ready to come to your home, to kosher your kitchen, to show you how it's done, how to live a kosher life, how to look for products, which products are kosher, which products are not kosher. And the Rebbe kept re-emphasizing over and over and over again that this is a benefit for you, for your family, for your children. You want healthy children, you want healthy psychological children. This is going to be part of that. And when they say to you, but why are we doing this? This is because Hashem has told us that for us, this is the healthiest diet that we can get. Now, without getting into the physical benefits of kosher or not kosher, people think that kosher is quality. Everybody loves the Hebrew national hot dogs because we answer to a higher authority. We won't get into that part, whether it has more quality, not more quality. If people believe so, better. Okay, fine. I'm okay with that. But the idea that we want to have spiritually strong Jews, and again, and the Rebbe kept emphasizing spiritually strong Jews that will then carry over into physically strong Jews, a healthy Jews, and a healthy Jew will make both mentally and physically healthy, will help society. And this is all tied up because dam kumsari, his blood, and his eating become part and parcel of who he is. So, if you're eating non-kosher meat, that becomes part of you, and that's unhealthy. So the Rebbe pushed, let's get out there, let's encourage people, speak from the heart. I know it's not easy, people are going to have to change their eating habits. We're not going to be able here in Long Beach. It's very difficult to find a kosher eating establishment. But nonetheless, to me, what's most important is my spiritual health. So I want to do whatever I can to keep kosher. And that was number 7. Mitzvah number 7.
So I want to ask you something because I
Sure.
get this question sometimes, but when it comes to kosher, like I tell people that you could do it in little tiny steps. And I think
Sure.
that's the right way. I mean, even if you just make a decision not to have, pork or not to eat
Correct.
shellfish or whatever, I mean, that's good enough. I'm saying for a start, like I think people are misunderstanding that you have to go the whole way or nothing.
No,
But I
no,
think there's ways
no.
that you can do it,
There
that
are
you can, right? I mean,
there
because
are steps to do.
we did
There
an
are steps
episode
to
on
do.
kosher. I don't know if we talked about it then, but maybe just to remind people that
No,
you
there are.
can do it in small ways. You don't
Yes,
have to do the whole thing.
yes,
And
yes.
I think
There,
that, I mean, it seems like that's kind of the theme behind this entire campaign, the mitzvah campaign of
Yeah.
the Rebbe
Yeah.
is, if you went to a Jew who is not observant and says, "Here's 613 mitzvahs, have at it," they'd be like, "Well, I'm not even gonna start because it's like, how do you do that,
exactly,
right?" But
exactly.
but if you make it accessible and you say, just do this one thing and then do the second thing and then do this third thing over time, well, now all of a sudden it becomes something that seems obtainable and it doesn't isn't this
Right.
insurmountable
Right.
goal. So,
Right.
to me, that's really the genius of this entire mitzvah campaign. Is it's not about getting someone to be perfect, right? Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good, right? Just
Right.
get someone
Exactly.
started on the road, and
Right.
eventually, maybe they'll get to 100 mitzvahs. Maybe they'll get to all 613. Maybe they'll do the 10. But it's better than what they were doing at the start, which was zero.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. I mean, it's like exercising. We all know that we need to exercise. If someone comes to you and says, Rabbi, you got to do 100 push-ups and 200 sit-ups, and run 12 miles, I'm out. I mean, you've lost me you've lost me at 100.
Yeah.
Goodbye. If someone comes to me and says, Rabbi, you got to do one sit-up, a half a push-up, but just do something. Get
Yeah.
your sneakers on and start
Right.
walking. Do something. I'm in. I'm
Right.
listening to you. So this was the Rebbe. Just get going. Just start doing something.
Start something.
And
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
Mitzvah 8, the eighth campaign, was where most people were wondering, because this has to do with intimacy. Now here we go to a biblical law that says, and no sugarcoating this, that when a woman is having her period, one is not allowed to have relations with her. Woman needs to go through, and ChayaLeah, you'll join in on this one. Of course, join in. A woman needs to go
Sure.
through a purification process after her period ends. She needs to count the number of clean days where she sees, no blood, and then she goes to a mikveh, which is what we would call a spiritual bath, a ritualarium.
All that, right.
This is what we call taris hamishpacha, the purity of the family. And Rebbe encouraged people to talk to married women that they should go to the mikveh. Now the Rebbe said, I understand that what you are going to feel uncomfortable, because now, like Jay had mentioned before, that now you're getting into people's really personal, private conditions. And tzedakah is one thing, kosher is another thing. But telling people when and where and how you could be intimate and when you shouldn't be intimate, and telling a woman to go to the mikveh, well, I understand that it may be uncomfortable for you, but think about this. Because the Rebbe believed so much in the connection between physicality and spirituality, and you want to have healthy children, this is one of the ways the Torah says, I guarantee you healthy children is by going to the mikveh. So if you knew, the Rebbe said, if you knew that you can save a physical child, say they came to you and they said, you know what, you have the ability of saving this one child who's in the hospital now, what would you do? Would you stop? Would you say, well, I'm not really comfortable because it's not really my kid and I don't want to talk to the doctors? You and only you can save that child. A city, would you hesitate for a moment? Without question. 3 o'clock in the morning, you'd be in your pajamas running to the hospital and talking to the doctors and telling them what to do. There would be not a shadow of a doubt that you would save that child. You would do anything, empty your bank account for that kid. So why is this any different? God willing, the people will have a child, she'll get pregnant, the child will grow up to be a healthy spiritual child, and it was you who were the conduit for allowing this couple to understand the importance of a woman going to the mikveh. And you know what? I'll be honest with you. Even though this is not, one of the favorite ones. I would say this is not mitzvah Teffilin, or this is not mitzvah Neshek, but people who did this, and the stories and stories and stories afterwards, of people that did this, and were successful, and people were successful in getting women to really realize and appreciate the importance of going to a mikveh. Then the Rebbe added, and if you're after menopause, you don't need this anymore. You need to go one more time, and that's it. For the rest of your life, you don't need to go to the mikveh anymore. So this was, again, these three that we've talked about before: the idea of lighting Shabbos candles, the kosher, and the mikveh, were all bundled up together in what we call the women's campaign. And the Rebbe used the acronym Chana, his mother's name, for talking about these three mitzvahs. Of Chala, Nida, and Adlakas Neiris, Chana, which is a beautiful name and means grace. It'll bring grace upon everybody. And ChayaLeah, why don't you chime in now?
I think we should do an episode on mikvah in general, and maybe all three of
Absolutely.
the women's mitzvahs,
Sure.
because there's a lot to say. I guess I would just say in a nutshell, the way you described, how the home is set by the mother, the wife, or with that karasa bias, as we would say. My friend Alana once referred to it as like the thermostat. The mother is the thermostat of the home, and the way you set, the temperature in the house, whether you want it hotter or colder, that's how a family is managed, kind of. And so the woman, we are the thermostat of the home. And so, I mean, that's just, I know maybe it's not PC to say, but it's true. And so all of these mitzvahs, and especially mikvah, I think, which is a very intimate mitzvah and something that, only married women can do. And it's very kind of private and secretive in a way. And so the fact that the Rebbe brought it out into the open and said, talk about it with people, bring it up. A lot of people are shocked by it. They don't know that it exists. I mean, I was just talking to somebody a few weeks ago about mikvah. I was telling this woman who's my age, 44, and she said, how is it possible that I went to Hebrew school my whole life? She didn't go, it was a non-Orthodox Hebrew school. She said, how is it possible I went to non-Orthodox Hebrew school my whole life? I never ever heard of this. I didn't even know that this existed. And it's such a big part of the life of a Jewish family. And, so we got into a long discussion about it. And I think it's incredible that the Rebbe wanted this to be public knowledge, and that we should be open and talk about it, and that we should make beautiful mikvahs, and that the community should stress that the mikvahs are, like oasis for the women, and a place that you want to go. It shouldn't be a hardship. It should be something that you find beautiful and meaningful. That's kind of revolutionary. I mean, it's not a given that rabbis cared, what the mikvah situation was for the women. It was like, hey, go do it. It's a mitzvah. You have to do it. The fact that the Rebbe wanted it to be comfortable and nice and something that we look forward to. I can't help but say how, like, he was so revolutionary in that way. And I really appreciate that perspective from him. And also just the fact that he wanted us to talk about it is pretty incredible. So thousands of women have gone to the mikvah because of this campaign, and it changes a lot of people's lives in very, very deep, meaningful ways. But we'll do an entire episode on it, because there's a lot of details that I'd love to sort of share and get into. Maybe my father could just not be in that one.
No, I'll be there. I'll be there.
I'm just
I'll
kidding.
be there. I'll be there to make sure that everything is above board, kosher,
Oh,
and yosher.
oh, really?
That's it.
You're gonna tell
Kosher and
me?
yosher. That's what we want.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, fine.
Anyways, moving right along to campaign number 9.
I'll make one comment about that really, really quickly.
Sure.
That I think it's interesting that, and this is just from the practical perspective, that I mean, clearly this was instituted to maximize the number of children that a family would have. I would think that would probably be the practical reason that something like this was instituted. And it's just interesting how, going back, several millennia, whenever this was originally instituted, they, the religious authorities recognized that this was the way that the practice we could put in place to make sure we were maximizing our population. and
right.
and it's just sort of this
Right.
observational science kind of thing
Yeah.
that's I think is interesting. And obviously, there's obviously a lot of religious laws behind it, but I think realistically there had to have been some practical application for this being
Yeah.
instituted the way that it was.
It really is a blending of science and religion
Absolutely.
into one
Yeah.
mitzvah. It's true.
Right.
It's true. Yeah, we'll get into it when we
We
talk
do a
about it.
episode,
Yeah.
sure,
Yeah.
sure.
So how many
So
more? What number
yeah,
are
so
we
there's
on?
two more. We got
Oh,
two
two
more to go.
more.
Two
Okay.
more to go. We're in number 9. Number
Okay.
9 was in the fall of 1975. We were going into the year 5736. The
Mm,
Rebbe proclaimed this year Shnas Achinuch. This is the year of
mm,
education. And he said in America, we love to make pronouncements in the beginning of the year. This is the year of this. This is the year of that. This is the year where we're going to do this. So the Rebbe said, based upon an American, pronouncements of year of education, this is the year of education. So what we're going to do is we're going to concentrate this year on getting as many children into Jewish day schools as possible. We're talking about saving lives on like the past mitzvah we talked about, in the family purity. This is literally taking a child and putting him into a Jewish environment in a Jewish school. And you can't imagine how this is going to affect not only the family, but the child and the generations to come. And that was a mitzvah that was dedicated particularly for that year. I mean, it kept going on obviously after 1975 as well, but that year was dedicated to mitzvah chinuch, year of educating a child. But not only educating a child in the sense of where you're going to go out there and teach a kid, which is connected to mitzvah Torah that we talked about, but actually getting him into day schools, getting them the proper education. And even though that we had also already had started many years ago what we called Wednesday hour, that public school children could take an hour off on Wednesday to get religious studies, which was allowed in certain states. The Rebbe said,
Hmm.
besides that, which is very good for that Wednesday hour, for the hour that you teach them, but we want to give the kids an immersion process. We want to get them into a Jewish day school and a proper day school with a proper education. And of course, you know what? We got to do this. And then again, people were wondering, Rebbe, it's going to be tough. You're getting involved in people's business, et cetera, et cetera. Don't worry. Don't worry. If you speak from the heart, it'll go into their heart. And then
yeah.
it's expensive, so the schools will have to go out and raise money. You know what? That's the key. But our job is to get as many children into Jewish day schools as possible. That's what our tafkid is. That's what our effort should be. And that's what our responsibilities are. And then he wrapped it all up at the end. Again, this was in the fall of that year, where he said all of these campaigns, all 9 of these campaigns, fall under the category, and it's with the idea of Avos Yisrael, of
Mm,
loving a fellow Jew. That the 10th campaign is a general campaign of caring for Jews. You know what? Even a Jew that you don't know, if he lives on the other side of the world, but if that Jew should one day ask a favor of you, you should be willing and ready to go out there and do it for them. But not only in the sense of, I have to do it as a sense of responsibility, but the Rebbe kept referring to V'hafta l'reyacha kamocha, that you should love your fellow as you love yourself,
mhm.
meaning that whatever you would do for yourself, you would do for someone else. And what you wouldn't want done to you, you don't want to do it to someone else. And even more so, the Rebbe said, because someone could say, well, you know what? I could do without chicken. So why should I give my friend chicken? I should give him chicken. I'll live without chicken. I'll suffer with vegetables and and some other stuff. So I said no. And that side, you could make the accounting for you, but not for your friend. So when you invite him, you'll give him chicken. You'll give him. The Rebbe didn't say that, but the Rebbe said you do better for your friend,
You better.
because to
Yeah.
yourself you could make a justification, of compromise and of sacrifice, but not when it comes to your friend. When it comes to
Yeah.
your friend, you need to get out there and do the best for him, and don't play games in your head where you say to yourself, well, look, I don't need it. Why do I need to give my friend a coat? I could just wear a jacket outside and it's winter. I don't care. I'm not that. So he needs a coat? No, get him a coat. You want to sacrifice? That's your cheshbon. That's your accounting. But to your friend, don't make that accounting. And that was the Rebbe's final campaign that he started in the 10 mitzvah campaigns or other campaigns that there's that we, and for time was like that there was a say for Torah campaign that he got all children to write a letter in
Right.
in a Torah. There were other campaigns that it came by, but these were the 10 mitzvah campaigns that the Rebbe started with the idea that you would go out there, if you're a Chabad follower, and take one of these, two of these, five of these, eight of these, whatever you want to do, and get another Jew to participate. Like you had said before, this was a starter. Doesn't mean that you have to go, like Jay mentioned. You don't have to, the ending is not the important thing. It's the journey. And as long as you're doing something, as long as you're in motion, motion creates emotion. That means doing something will create a good idea in your head. It'll get you straightened out. It'll get you into a good mood. It'll make you happy. And, if you have happiness and you have satisfaction and you have meaning in life, what more is there to ask for? And this was the idea behind the Rebbe's 10-point mitzvah campaign. And we don't have to talk about theory of how it worked. We see it. We see it, how literally millions of Jews were affected by these campaigns one way or another. Some
That's right.
superficially, maybe just quickly put on tefillin once, or some completely changed their lives and became Bali Tshuva, became part of the Chabad family. We know that these literally changed the face of the Jewish people in the times that the Rebbe had instituted, starting from the mitzvah tefillin, from the 67 war campaign of putting on tefillin, until the last campaign of Avos Yisrael, of loving each other like brothers and sisters, and and loving them like yourself. The Rebbe revolutionized Judaism. What can I tell you?
He did. That would be a good one for us to focus on right now. I feel like the loving your fellow Jew. I feel like we're so divided today. I wish we could really somehow work on that together, but I don't know. Jay, what do you think's the hardest one, as someone who's not you're almost fully Chabad, but not quite fully Chabad yet?
Yeah, almost there. Almost. Oh, the hardest one. I think that the hardest one, I think, is making the move to being kosher. Because that's not something that I can just decide. Oh, I don't care anyone else in my house does. I'm going to be kosher.
Right.
That doesn't work. Like it needs to be a group decision to do that, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's probably the hardest one, because it involves the most people, and B, it is a long-term commitment.
It's a huge commitment. Yeah.
Like Shabbat candles.
But yeah, that's not a big deal.
Right. And everyone can do that. And it's just like, do it. And it doesn't involve changing your life. Right. So I think the kosher thing is the hardest one.
Yeah. That's why I said before, with kosher, especially, like, I know people who just simply stop eating certain animals, right? Like they don't eat pork anymore, or they don't eat shellfish anymore. They make one little commitment. That way it doesn't affect anybody else in their family, and they get to feel like they're doing something. But you're right. I mean, it's some of them are easy. Buying Jewish books, I mean, that's fine. Like that's something you can do. It doesn't require you to change your life, but some of them definitely are lifestyle changes.
Exactly.
But I own good to just do small steps.
I own lots of Leon Uris books, so I've got the Jewish books. I've got the Jewish books
that
covered.
Doesn't count. That does not count.
I know. I'm joking.
Reading the Hajj does not make you a Chabad.
Exactly.
But he does have good books. I do like his books, actually.
Oh yeah, I love Leon Uris. Yeah,
I love him. I know. Okay, I think that was great. I don't know if anyone has any last minute things they want to say, but feel free.
I just encourage everyone that's going to listen to this, just get going. Don't overthink it.
Right.
Don't overthink it. One of my favorite movies that I like to watch from time to time is Forrest Gump.
Oh.
If you remember that movie, it's only on the television every 2 minutes, but it's the story. So someone just yesterday wrote in a quote, someone on Facebook, these things pop up. Why was this dummy successful? I mean, he's a dumb guy. Why was he successful? So one of the answers was he didn't overthink things.
Right.
He just did them. He didn't think twice. When she said run, he didn't think, why should I run? he ran.
Yeah.
And when she said this, he did. And when he was going to be a shrimp boat captain, he didn't overthink it. What, when, how? He just did it. And
Right.
because he did it in the simplicity, now he got lucky, obviously. But that's a problem that we have in America. We overthink things 50 times before we do something.
Right.
And
Right.
here is a perfect opportunity the Rebbe put on our plate just to get going. Just to get going.
Yeah. And I think I would just add my last thing is that I think if, like, for someone like me, let's say, who I've been Orthodox my whole life and I do almost all of these things, maybe not Teffilin, but, I do all the other things all the time. I think for someone like me, it's about the intention and how I'm doing them, right? Like I could come to light Shabbos candles. I could be totally stressed out, in a bad mood, freaking out. My house is at chaos. I do it quickly without thinking, and I don't pay attention. Or I could be calm, take a deep breath, let myself relax for a minute, just come with the right intention. So even if these are mitzvahs that you've done your whole life, I think it's an opportunity to think about doing them in a way that's more meaningful, more fulfilling um, without losing out, because it's a good opportunity even for those of us who've done it many times.
100%.
I see my father's out the door. You can leave. You can leave. Goodbye. You've said enough.
It's almost
You've had your
Shabbos.
fair
We're
share.
talking about Shabbos candles. It's almost Shabbos.
Go. We are
All
done
right.
with you.
Thank you so very much.
Signing off for Shabbos.
Yeah.
Bye, everybody.
Exactly.
The pleasure being you. Till next time, have a wonderful day and a wonderful week.
Thank
Take care.
you. Bye, Ta. Thank you.